Hey, what's going on? We're taking a look at AEW Dark, as I tend to do, and I noticed that other places have started picking up and covering AEW Dark, which I think is wonderful. I think it's a testament to how that show has definitely grown. This show had 10, count them, 10 matches, holy guacamole, and there was an attempt to sort of bridge match to match, to throw in some like sort of early angle stuff and that kind of thing. And that bodes well for AEW Dark. And of course, it gives a number of guys an opportunity, and I'm all for that. Sprinkled throughout this sort of look at each one of the matches is going to be stuff that I'm noticing that people are saying in regards to critiquing and criticizing AEW Dark, which I find to be a really strange thing. Make no mistake about it, it's a wonderful thing. A lot of indie men and women are getting their shot to kind of get in there and do their thing. Now, what will come out of it is questionable, but there's no doubt that it's a great experience, if nothing else. But a number of people have kind of taken to criticizing it. I'll probably address that throughout. Our commentators are Taz and Excalibur. Right at the top of AEW Dark, and this is something I've suggested. I'm glad it's being done. I'm not saying at the behest of my suggestion or anything, but it is what it is. The show's, by the way, clocks in an hour and 23 minutes. Jeez Louise, that's a long one. They open with this great thing of Brian Cage winning that ladder match at Double or Nothing and being out there with Taz, and I love that the voiceover is Taz saying how he doesn't owe anybody an explanation about their relationship. I think having a little mystery there is good, and having people talk about it is good, and I like it, and it's a great way to bring in Dark. We're good stuff, I wrote down here in my notes. First one is a tag match. They seem to use a lot of tag matches in Dark in lieu of one. I think it's great because then you're creating these tag teams and having some tag teams go over, and then you can pit them against each other later on, which I think is a great thing. I am glad, and I have to admit, a little shocked that AEW doesn't just go to like scramble matches, which is like an indie staple. I'm glad that they don't do that. I fucking hate a scramble match without a purpose. And also the pointless battle royals. Now, AEW, as they promote at the end of the show, is having a battle royal on Wednesday on Dynamite, but it's for a discernible purpose. So I'm glad. Again, I love all these tag matches. Of course, it violates the rule of you shouldn't put tag matches back to back on a card, or at least in how they're structuring the program, but whatever, I like it. So you have the Dark Order, the unmasked ones, who put on their masks inexplicably during the match. That's never really explored or explained. I guess I like that. I do like that there's some stuff that's out there for discussion later on, but I thought it was noteworthy to at least say, they put on their masks. That's interesting. I wonder why they do that. They're taking on QT Marshall and Dustin Rhodes with Brandi. Dustin Rhodes, who I thought had a great thing at Double or Nothing, where he's taking on Shawn Spears, who's working a new gimmick, which I really, really like, and I've spoken highly of. The match is what it is. It's well done. It's well executed. Two notable things. One, Allie coming out with the blonde hair. Hello. Eating the apple, getting the attention of QT Marshall. I like this. I think it puts a little wrinkle on QT, who's pretty bland and generic, and I think this gives him something to do and something to play off of and to show other skills besides just sort of filling the role that they need with the Nightmare team. And that's one noteworthy thing. And then the other noteworthy thing is just how small the Dark Order guys are, but they get beaten in quick, efficient manner. Then you've got the Canadian Destroyer by Dustin Rhodes, followed by the Cutter, which is going to be QT's new thing, I suppose. Match number 2. We've got Michael Nakazawa, who was last seen covering himself in oil and fending off chops with it and all the other kind of silliness, going up against Brandon Cutler. And the story with Brandon Cutler is that he hasn't won a match, and he's 0-12. And they actually made some hay about this, which I thought was great. The ref tossing the Turkish oil I thought was really funny. Again, just trying to give a little bit of flavor on this. Brandon Cutler is one of these guys that on the surface seems to have it all, right? His gear looks really great. He's got this thing, his gamer thing where he rolls a 20-sided, which, by the way, he rolled a 2, and that does not bode well. I would have responded to rolling a 2 before I came to the ring. That is a shit roll, as someone who's played a lot of Dungeons and Dragons. Brandon Cutler was counted out, which was an interesting thing. And then he's berated by Peter Avalon, the Librarian, and Leva Bates. Big fan of Leva Bates. Glad she's out there. And basically, Peter Avalon and Brandon get a little mic time. And Peter goes like, "You're going to be the worst because I'm about to win my next match." And then Brandon gets to go to commentary. Again, it's small stuff, but I really like that they're doing this. They're making the show feel like a show and fleshing it out a little bit. Peter Avalon is taking on Jungle Boy, who's just so great. He's one of these guys that I'm like, I don't get the shtick. I don't like it. Had that great match with MJF on Dynamite, and then I started paying a little more attention, if I'm being honest. And then when he hit that like springboard twisting thing into a DDT, I was definitely impressed. There's a smoothness to which he runs. I know a lot of people think, well, a lot of these indie guys who are getting this shot in AEW, if you want to call it a shot, or just say, they're getting matches, they're as good as the guys that they have under contract. I'm going to just lay it out this simply. In most cases, they are not. And what I mean by that is there's a smoothness of the guys like the Dustin Rhodes where you can clearly see that guy's on a different level. I think Colt Cabana is another guy that when he wrestles, you just see there's a comfort and a smoothness and a presence there. And Jungle Boy is another one. There may be guys who can do the same moves as him, but there's a sort of fluidity and confidence that comes with Jungle Boy. And I mean, when he locks in, I would have just said this for Brandon on the commentary. Brandon, so now we're going to talk about the Peter Avalon thing. So, I think it would have behooved him to be much more urgent about whenever Peter Avalon was about to win. If they're going to do this angle of we'll see who gets our win first, which I assume is going to be a match where the two of them face off against each other, which is phenomenal, then Brandon's got to have a huge sense of urgency about wanting desperately for Peter Avalon to lose. Does that make sense? Yeah, just amp it up. Whatever they're giving you to do, however small it may seem, it's a thing. So make the most out of it. I thought the kissing spot was really weird. It really came across as heelish, though I suppose Leva was taking the ref. But it just felt really weird because there you have Luchasaurus putting her on his shoulders, which is really vulnerable, and then Marko Stunt coming and kissing her. I mean, but it was a thing, right? They gave him a thing instead of just having it being a match of no consequence where nothing really happens and gives Leva something to do, etc., etc., etc. I get it. That's just my note for almost everybody involved, is a bigger sense of urgency of whatever they're giving you to do. It should be the biggest thing in your life. Cool. And so now we got Serpentico and Christopher Daniels. A match that's really well done. I'm a big fan of Serpentico and John Cruz. I think that they're really solid. Again, the size differential thing is incredibly notable, but what is also just as notable is the fact that John Cruz, as far as bell-to-bell in-ring, can hang with anybody. It's really good. And Christopher Daniels, in fact, lets him escape from one of his finishers and then later hits him with the best moonsault ever, which is great because I never get to see Christopher Daniels land this thing or get a pin off of it, and he does both. So it definitely serves its purpose, and it is good stuff here. Going into match number 5. Holy moly, match number 5. John Skyler and Brady Pierce, who's very tall. That was very noticeable. He's significantly taller than everybody in this match. And he's one of these guys that a lot of people would look at. If he was this tall and had, let's say, Gunnar Miller's size and sort of more of his defined look, because there's a sort of a resemblance there between Brady Pierce and Gunnar Miller, but Gunnar Miller is definitely like much more on the heavy side, the heavyweight side. I think then you really got something. Brady Pierce has got a good, decent facial expressions. John Skyler's just a pro. And he's the one I wanted to talk about, because Mike Moonahan had mentioned a thing where he was like, John Skyler's one of these guys that deserves more. And John Skyler, had a thing with Corey Hollis where they had some NXT appearances and stuff. And people are lamenting that the two of them should be signed in AEW, or at least be making appearances more than some of the other indie talent that we've seen. I can only say this. Connections matter. And I don't know why people can't advocate for somebody without downplaying others. It's just really silly. This is entertainment and performance, and are we supposed to create some kind of pecking order of who should get what? I think that's just that's a non-starter. John Skyler can be great without other people being shit, is what I'm saying. And John Skyler, if I'm being bluntly honest, there's nothing about him. If I did not know who he was, his ring work was good, no doubt, and is really solid. But there's nothing about him looking where I just get this like waves of charisma off of him that's sort of undeniable. And that's something for everybody to note. Who stands out amongst the people that aren't contracted with AEW? And if the answer is, well, I'm not really, then that's a problem. I saw people making efforts to stand out, but you got to be special. And John Skyler is fantastic, no doubt about it. And I wish him luck, and I wish him success. I just don't like the general attitude coming from people I know and guys like Mike Moonahan, where it's like, this person deserves this, and these other people by proxy do not. I think that's a really bullshit attitude. I don't like it at all. All right, going on to the match, the Concrete Rose Sonny Kiss, who I've heard a lot about and not really seen. I get the hype. Boy, say what you want, unforgettable. That front handspring kick thing was great. They actually replayed it. And it almost made the Joey Janela winning with a top rope elbow look really weak. Joey Janela also got pyro, which I thought was like really out of place and really funny. But I guess he's gotten, he was the replacement for Phoenix in the ladder match at the pay-per-view and all this kind of stuff. So it is what it is. Sonny Kiss and Joey Janela do not have a chemistry. And it's not just because their styles are different, because I think one of the tag matches later on, like with Kip Sabian, right, and Jimmy Havoc, we see that they've developed a chemistry, a real good chemistry there, in spite of having very different styles. So it's not that exclusively. This match is what it is, and it ends. Great. So moving on to match number 6, we got Tony Donati and Faboo Andre. And these two guys are really showing out and trying to get seen, especially Faboo, who I thought really set up Jimmy Havoc and Kip Sabian really well with Penelope Ford. Penelope Ford does a split thing all the time, just like Sonny Kiss does. And there's a time where somebody would have been booking and would have gone and somehow made hay out of Sonny Kiss and Penelope Ford both do the splits. Let's make a little thing out of it. So I kind of hope that they do that somehow. Some kind of conflict based around we both do the splits. That's the kind of silly stuff that you can do on sort of B and C shows for a promotion. I know it's, Steve, are you saying AEW Dark is a B show? Yeah, it is. It clearly is. But that doesn't mean they can't have fun. In fact, I like that they're doing angles. I like that they introduced the alley thing, because that's a clip that's probably going to show up on Dynamite, right? And when that clip shows up on Dynamite, it brings more attention to AEW Dark, etc., etc., etc. I'm going to sort of of look at the AEW Darks. I'm going to make a note for myself to do this. And I want to look and see how the views have gone up. I imagine that they really have. Now, that doesn't clock in how long people are watching. I doubt people are watching for an entire hour and 23 minutes, for example. However, unless they're dumb like me, or dedicated like me. But I will say that giving little things to do and then having it cross over with some clips on Dynamite and pointing more attention to AEW Dark, and they're beginning to promote it more. I think that's all good stuff. They do the field goal kick bit that I really liked that they did before, Jimmy Havoc and Kip Sabian. So I like that. Tony Donati didn't get in much, but when he got in, he showed this sort of like hammerlock turning into a suplexing the guy on his arm thing. That's the kind of thing I mean. Like, what's a move that you can do that I haven't seen before? I used to see this when you would have guys that would come in dark matches for TNA, that they would tell them, like, show us something that you haven't seen before. And I have a great story about Jay Fury, who's a guy I trained, who really went in there and wowed them with that kind of thing. And then the match ends, drop kick Michinoku driver, which the commentators note is sort of a tribute to a British tag team. Just little stuff like that connects AEW to the outside wrestling world that they can point out. I think is really good, and it sounds good. Cool. So we're moving into match 7. We got Mr. Grimm against Wardlow. Obviously an exhibition for Wardlow. A couple things I noted was Wardlow, the only time I saw him wrestle was in his debut against Cody Rhodes in that phenomenal cage match. Really, really good. I believe it was on Dynamite. But he's 3-1 now. I just wrote, okay. I get that you got to pad this guy's record a little bit, and I think that's perfectly fine. And he pads it further on Mr. Grimm here. The finish, he actually couldn't land his like F10, though he got to do it later, which I thought was really smart. We want to see him do this big move, and so we got to see that later. But they experimented with this thing where Mr. Grimm sort of falls from the top rope, sort of nesty plunges, but face first, and then catches a knee strike on the way down, and he's knocked out. The only thing I would say is whoever's selling this move, I appreciate that Wardlow's doing it safe and not kneeing him on the face on the way down. But Mr. Grimm and everybody else in the future, you have to snap your head back as if you got decked in the fucking head and sell the shit out of that thing. Have us questioning, because they had the proper camera angle, so you couldn't see where the knee was hitting. And if we had gotten a nice head snap back and a crumple to the ground, I think it would have put that move over in a big way. Just a little advice for the guys as they continue to, there's this sort of negative connotation to quote unquote doing the job, but there shouldn't be. You should be putting the guys over as effectively as you can. If that's your job, that's what you got to do. And I would have loved to see that knee strike off of the fall look absolutely devastating. And it did not, but hopefully he will not stop using it, because I think there's something kind of unique and interesting about it. And I would love to see what that thing looks like when it's sold to the hilt, and how you could just have like clip after clip of that move. Awesome. Moving on to match 8, we got Lee Johnson, we got Colt Cabana. Again, I thought just a technical clinic for Colt Cabana, and sort of an interesting discussion amongst the commentators about what Lee Johnson needs to do to really get over. I think at this point, it would have been interesting to hear Taz talk about the early part of his career, where he was the Tasmaniac and wasn't really getting over, but then he got that first win. The commentators do this good job of giving an importance to everybody, including the guys who are coming in to lose, where they go like, they just need to put that one win together. I think Taz talking about his own wrestling experience would lend itself towards this even more. By the way, I should say this. Taz is, I can't believe I'm saying this. Yeah, I can. Taz is my favorite commentator at AEW right now. I think he works the hardest. I think he does the best job. I think a lot of the like silly flubs that he used to do when he was at like TNA and stuff like that, I think that's a thing of the past. And Taz does still take chances and have fun. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But I think he does a really good job of putting over the stories and giving importance to everything. I really like the job that Taz does. Let me just say that again. Cool. But Colt Cabana wins with the Billy Goat's curse after putting on an absolute technical clinic, to the point where it was so smooth that it almost looked too much on that fakey end. But again, Colt just has a sort of a natural charisma about him. I think he's he's a very different look than everybody else in AEW, the constant smiling and the glad handing and all that kind of stuff. And he can still bring it in big matches. Now, what is the angle that they can come up with for Colt that will sort of catapult him into a different category other than good hand and AEW Dark unofficial champion, which is what's happening now? I don't know, but I'm curious to see, and that's a good thing. Going on to match 9. Kilynn King, who's somebody I saw wrestle this great ladder match against a guy at a show in a warehouse, and she was phenomenal, and I was really excited to see her here. And then she's going against Penelope Ford, who hasn't looked that sharp. And I'll say this, Kilynn King and her developed a kind of chemistry. Penelope Ford looked much more comfortable. I like Penelope Ford because she's smaller. And of course, she's, oh my God, she's good looking, right? And she throws herself around, springboards and handspring elbows and all this kind of stuff. She really throws herself into what she does. And it clicked here more than it did in the other times that I've seen her. And that's great, and that's a testament to Kilynn King. Kilynn King, and again, I might catch flack for this, but I'm just going to say it. If she tightens up her midsection a little bit, she'll be on her way, because she's got a lot of the other tools that you need. She's got kind of a natural charisma, good facial expressions. She delivers her moves cleanly. She takes bumps she does the mechanical stuff very well, and she does facial expressions very well, and she's able to convey emotion and get things across. We tighten up that look just a little bit, and I think sky is the limit for her. And finally, last but certainly not least, as the cliche goes, we've got Shawn Dean and Alan Angels together as a team, which is very exciting, against Best Friends. Now, Best Friends are described as the #1 contenders to the tag titles, which kind of makes you realize, not because it's Best Friends, that sounds like a diss, but that, man, these tag matches haven't factored in much at all. Hopefully, we're getting away from the Inner Circle versus Elite stuff just for a little while, so Kenny Omega and Page, who are the tag champs, can get to the business of actually wrestling as a fucking tag team. That would be nice. I will say this for Shawn Dean and Alan Angels in a match that was very fast and was really designed to make Best Friends look as good as possible. Shawn Dean and Alan Angels did their job in that regard. They really made Best Friends, because this is the de facto main event. It's match number 10 on a 10-match show. And there was a great sense of urgency from Shawn Dean and Alan Angels, and it reminded me to give that note to the other people who are wrestling as sort of developmental talent for AEW. You got to have a sense of urgency. It's work constantly, even when you're not bumping or running the ropes or delivering offense. It's all the work is giving the match a sense of urgency and competition. And I thought Shawn Dean and Alan Angels did a phenomenal job at that. And then we're at the end of the show, and they lose to Best Friends, to their finisher. And then we get a promotion for Dynamite Battle Royal, the winner to take on the TNT champion, who is Cody Rhodes. So anyway, that's my AEW Dark analysis. Let me get this bad boy up. Thanks for listening.